Good afternoon, Mr. Ogden.
Pete.
Pete? We're
Mr.
here.
Ogden was my dad.
We're here to interview you as part of the Lawrence Park Centennial celebration that begins next year. And you have been an integral part of the township since the 1950s. We're going to start by asking a little bit of biographical information. Where were you born? And how did you get to Lawrence Park in the first place?
Well, I was born in the hospital, trying to be close to my mother. I was born in Bradford, Pennsylvania, August 1st, 1935. I didn't stay in Bradford long. We moved when I was in second grade. I started school in Bradford and went at Tuna Township, Lincoln School in Tuna Township, in a Bradford suburb. Family moved in 1942. I was in second grade, and I got a real shock. They gave me my report card from the school in Tuna Township. They said, Alan Ogden. My family, from day one, called me Peter. And I thought Peter was my name. So it made a little bit of confusion. But we moved to from Bradford to DuBois at that time. We were in DuBois from 42 to 49. In the meantime, Dad had been drafted into World War II. He was 35 years old and 2 children and was drafted. He didn't last long. He got drafted in February and discharged in December of 45. The war was over. So we stayed in DuBois from 42 to 49. Again, Dad changed jobs. So we packed up and moved to what I refer to as a wide spot in the road in Mercer County, a little town called Jackson Center. It's named for the center of Jackson Township. I enrolled then in the fall of 49 as a freshman at Stoneboro High School. Finished in 1953. Didn't know what I was going to do. But that summer I went to work. I lied my age to get a job. I wasn't 18 yet. But I got a job working for, at that time, it was the Pennsylvania Department of Highways in Mercer. Dad took me to work in the morning, and Dad came and picked me up at night and brought me back. We didn't have a car. My sister had the only car in the family. And she had to have it to go to work. So Dad took me to work wherever the job happened to be that day. And it was rough work. We were subsealing Route 19. Now with subsealing, it was a concrete highway, and the overburden was starting to wash away. So every so often they would come along and somebody marked where. We had a pneumatic drill, and we'd drill through the concrete, a hole about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches in diameter. And then they came along with hot tar under high pressure and forced it into that hole. That tar spread out underneath the concrete pad and filled up what erosion had washed out. And that lasted all summer. Thank heavens. That was a good job. Finished that job up, but income tax at that time was a very important thing to my dad. He didn't have much money, and so when I made $500 total for the summer, I had to quit, because if I made more than $500, Dad couldn't claim me as a dependent on his income tax form. So I ended up with about 3 weeks of summer vacation, so-called, and I went back. I'd worked on the dairy farm part-time during high school, weekends, vacations, occasionally in the evening worked, and went back up to see Charlie Burnham, the gentleman who owned the farm. He said, "Oh, I can sure use you. I'm baling hay tomorrow." So I spent 2 weeks baling hay, And then I followed the thrashing machine for a while. We thrashed oats and wheat. And by then, had enough money stashed away that the government didn't know about, and I was able to go to college, and I started at Edinburgh. Well, I thought I had enough money for the year, but it didn't. I had no idea what a textbook cost. At that time, a very expensive textbook was about $25. Today it's probably about $250.
Yep.
But so I worked. I made friends with a lot of the classmates of mine. One of my professors was a former neighbor of mine. I did not know it until I got there. And I toured with him. He was also a math professor, Dr. Early. So in the end of my freshman year, I went home, couldn't find work. Big Steel was on strike. It was to be 54. And I was ready to go to service. I was going to join the Army. Just nothing else to do. And in the meantime, a lady who worked in the dean's office knew that I had a problem financially. And so she was kind of looking out for me, I think. I got home from school, and I took that around 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, the telephone rang. Our phone we didn't use the telephone much. It was very unusual to get a phone call. I was kind of scared. Did somebody die? What happened? It was Marg's niece calling. She was the gal who worked in the dean's office. And she said, I understand you're looking for a job. I said, you're right. She said, my husband needs somebody tomorrow. Where? Ridgeway. Well, okay, what's the story? He's a roofing and siding contractor. The man he had working for him couldn't climb a ladder. He'd get up to the third step of the ladder, he just couldn't go any higher. Can you climb? I said, oh yeah, I climbed all kinds of trees and roofs, and sure. Where can I find your husband? He's in Ridgeway. Okay. Where's Ridgeway? I didn't know where it was. Got a road map out, figured out where Ridgeway was. I get up early the next morning, a $10 bill in my pocket, and I started for Ridgeway on my thumb. I got there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Ron was just coming off the ladder, just coming off the scaffold. He had to tearing off slate roof on an old house in Ridgeway. So we got that job taken care of, and it's filthy. Ridgeway is a small town, and had coal furnaces for heat. Underneath those shingles, those slate shingles, just nothing but dirt. But we stayed at a hotel there, the Bogart Hotel. Ron paid all the hotel expenses. I had to buy my own meals. And the next job that we had was in St. Mary's. And it just kind of jumped around on this. We worked for a company out of Erie. And I worked, when Ron and I traveled all summer, we were in State College, we were in Du Bois, we were in Clearfield, Punxsutawney, Western Pennsylvania. And the company in Erie, right up on State Street, they had salesmen who went out and sold jobs. Ron was a subcontractor working, and wherever they found a job, that's where we went. And we pitched a tent and slept in the front yard. And we sometimes stayed at a motel, sometimes a hotel, and things went real well. It was a great job, and I enjoyed it. I worked hard at it. At the end of my sophomore year, again, we were in Kane. It was pouring down rain, and it was a terrible day, and couldn't do any work. So I was going to join the Army from Kane. Well, somebody stopped at my shoulder, and Ron said, I'll take care of you. So I had 2 or 3 days I didn't have work. Beyond that, I spent the whole summer with Ron. And it worked out very well. And for me, it was a good experience. I made good money. I got paid when he got paid. It wasn't every 2 weeks. It was whenever we finished the job, he got paid, he paid me for the hours that I had worked, and it worked very well.
Can we jump ahead to graduation and get you to Lawrence Park?
Okay, I interviewed for a job as a teacher in a school district down there. And I can't remember the name of the district. But the gentleman who was the superintendent that I had to talk to, his last name was spelled Jaquues. And when I walked in there and introduced myself, and he was a doctor. But I didn't know that. I just knew he was Mr. Jaquues. He wasn't Jacques, he was Mr. Jaquues. And he wasn't Mr., he was Dr. Jaquues. And he said, well, you want to work here? Well, I wasn't certain if I wanted to work for that kind of a man or not. And I said, well, I'm not sure. We had a long discussion, and he said, I'll notify you within 2 weeks. Okay. Well, I came home, and I got the phone call, and no, but I hired somebody else. Okay, so I said, I'll start looking again, I guess. And somebody tipped me off, and I'm not certain who it was, that at Edinburgh, in one of the offices, they had marked vacancies where people were looking for teachers' jobs. And Lawrence Park High School was listed. So I didn't know where Lawrence Park was. I was living on the west side at the time. And I found an application. In 2 or 3 days, I got a phone call. We'd like to interview you. Okay, so I came out for the interview. I wasn't even wet behind the ears yet, I felt like. And in walks Harry Rhodes for the interview. I had no idea who he was. And he stuck out this great big paw and he said, so you want to work here, do you? Well, I'm ready to say no, I'm going to run out. I said, I'd like to give it a try. Well, let's talk about it. So we had a typical interview. He said, I'll have an answer for you tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow came and the telephone rang, I answered it. Told me who he was, and he said, we've got an offer for you. We don't need a high school math teacher right now, which I was certified for. But we do need someone for 5th and 6th grade arithmetic. Would you take that? I said, I'm not certified for it. We'll take care of that. Don't you worry about that. This is probably mid-August, and they're getting ready to start school. So I went in there, I interviewed with Archie Sunback. He was the man who was teaching 5th grade at Priestley Avenue School. Hadn't been there for years. And Archie wanted a break. He wanted to go to the high school. So that left Archie's job at the grade school open, and Mr. Rhodes offered it to me. And I mean, well, when he would take care of his certification, that wasn't a problem. I got an emergency certification. I don't understand how or why, but I got that. And I started that September at Priestley Avenue School. I had three classes in the morning of 5th graders, 3 classes in the afternoon of 6th graders. Arithmetic. So that worked out very well. I didn't have I was married at the time. I got married in the meantime. Pat, my first wife and I got married in June of 56. And we started the family, of course. Pam was born in December of 57. So I was really pushing hard for money.
Pete, what year did you start teaching in Lawrence Park?
1957.
Okay, thank you.
I still didn't know what I was going to do for. This was just a 1-year shot at Priestley Avenue, I thought. Well, it ended up it was 4 years, and it was good, very good. And I ended up. Archie was ready to go back to the grade school. He was tired of the high school kids and their attitudes and so forth. And we had some pretty tough kids at that time. And I wanted to go to the high school because I wanted to go into graduate school, and I didn't have money. But if I was teaching mathematics at the secondary level, I could apply for National Science Foundation scholarship money to go to graduate school. So I went to Mr. Rhodes and said, in the spring of the year, I said, I'd like to transfer to high school. Why? Well, I said, explained to him my financial situation, and I said, I think that's what I think I need to do. You got all your angles figured out, don't you? And I said, yeah, I try hard. And we laughed. He said, you're all set. We've got a class for you next fall. So I transferred to high school. Archie came back to his old position at the Preeti Avenue School, and he was real satisfied, and so was I. And I taught everything from 8th grade arithmetic through calculus.
And I had Archie for 6th grade arithmetic.
Okay.
And then I had you for 7th and 8th grade algebra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how many years did you end up teaching there?
I taught there. Well, Lawrence Park and Wesley were forced into a merger. Iroquois became the result of that. And in the meantime, Harold Mountwell was hired. He was hired the same time I was. He had the secondary job. He was teaching trig and calculus and plane geometry and solid geometry and all the advanced math that he taught over there. And I went to Kent State University that summer. Took 8 weeks of the so-called new mathematics. And it was a complete different from what normally it had in mathematics. And it was very interesting. I spent 8 weeks at Kent, and the deal was they paid my tuition, they paid my housing, and one round trip from my home to Kent. And they paid me, and in addition to that, I got a stipend for my wife and family. So I was making better money than I was in teaching, but I stuck with it.
Where were you living in Lawrence Park at that time?
The first house that I had was a row house on Iroquois Avenue, 4208 Iroquois. Right, the first house, as you come out of, at that time was the primary school. Right there it was, you could come down the driveway at the primary school and you stop, my house was right there. It was the last brick house on that side of Iroquois Avenue. And we were there for 4 years. We rented from that house. On a Sunday morning, I'd gone to church. On the way home from church, I was walking up to Mary's Dairy Bar on Main Street, either to get a package of cigarettes or a newspaper, I'm not sure of which. And Salvador Rodriguez was living at 854 Smithson. And Rod was out working in his yard. He was a state trooper. And I walked by, and he was very odd. I spoke, "Hi Rod, how you doing?" No answer. So I went on to Mary's Dairy Bar, got what I wanted, came back. Rod's still working in his front yard. And he stopped me. He said, we're past the time of day, how you doing, what are you doing, and so forth. And he said, he was putting a for sale sign in his yard, that's what he was doing. And I said, I see you're going to sell your house. He said, yeah. I said, would you accept a land contract? For you, I would. Oh, okay. 2 days later, we met with Jim Jenks, who was the attorney. He drew up all the papers, the loan papers, and the whole 9 yards. And I bought Salvador's house at 854 Smithson. So Pat and I and the teachers from the high school moved. We took one piece of furniture at a time from across Iroquois Avenue and across Smithson Avenue to Les Phobes. We were walking along behind, and anything that dropped out of a box, he'd pick it up. And we jackset it on one end of a mattress one night after work, and that was Bill Weaver on the other end, and they were hit by a car in the middle of Iroquois Avenue, carried a mattress and the box springs across the streets. It was a real circus, but it worked out.
How long did you live in that house?
I was in 854 for 20 years. My wife and I raised the family pretty much there. Well, in the meantime, the house next door to me came for sale. It was a little red brick home right there. And people named Johnson owned the house. And she quoted me a price for the house. And Pat and I talked about it. We'll see what we can do. And I thought she was pretty high on price, low on price, and I was real pleased. So to see her at her office to sign papers, and her price went up $10,000. So I said, well, I'm not interested. So that deal fell apart. But I did eventually buy that red brick house. And before I moved into it, I had a friend of mine who was teaching at the Votech school. And I said to him, I'd like you to come out, take a look at my house. It's 3 bedrooms, but the 1 bedroom is small. The floor space is about 9 by 12. What I'd like to do is take the washer and dryer out of the basement and put them in that 3rd bedroom. Oh, okay. I was getting to the point where my legs were starting to bother me at this time. I'm getting up and down stairs. And that house, it was not a typical stairway, it was a little steeper than usual. And so I made a deal with Dave, and he plumbed that 3rd bedroom. We were in the house for 3 or 4 months, I'm guessing, at time. Pat was coming from the bathroom toward the kitchen, and I came in from the back door, and she stopped me, gave me a big hug, and she said, "Thank you." I was dumbfounded. I said, "Thank you for what?" She said, "Put the laundry in there upstairs. I don't need to go down steps anymore." She was having leg troubles at that time. So we stayed there. I got ready to, Jim Crotty was in the red brick house. He was renting it. He bought a house over on Lower Burkhart. But he couldn't move in. This was in May. He couldn't move in until August. What's he going to do? I said, "I don't know what you're going to do." Well, we did a deal. I said, "Tell you what, Jim, you can live in this house until you have to get out, until you're ready to go get out. But in the meantime, I'm not going to charge you any rent. But you pay both sides of the costs on the closing when I buy that brick house." So in August, Jim has got the money right, and our deal was civil. I bought 858 Smithson. We were there 20 years.
And when did you start getting involved in township affairs outside of the schools?
Oh, I can't quote it right at that date, and I don't remember what it was. Denny Luce and I both ran for township commissioner. I won the race, and Denny and I are still the best of friends. It's been, so it would probably have been late 60s. I finished up my master's degree at Pitt in 64. So it was mid-60s. And at the time, they were still working on plans for the Iroquois High School building. And that was one of the bonuses that I got. Mr. Rhodes needed help. They had a bid opening at 6 o'clock one evening. Nobody could be there from the school board, but I could accept the bids, read them, and tally them. I could handle that, sure. So I got done on the ground floor of the building of the Iroquois High School building. And
who else was involved in that process that you remember?
Who, members of the school board?
Just people who were involved, including the school board.
Oh, many community people. I'm not certain who all was on what side of the board there, but it was, names that I can recall would be Schreckengost, Jack Schreckengost. I don't think he was a school board member. He may have been. Bob Kilgore, John Vossers, John Tecker.
Was C.E. Grider involved?
Yes, Ed Grider. Yes, very definitely.
Mrs. Strong?
Ruth Strong was the tax collector and school treasurer. Stan Flaw was the school treasurer.
Who else were you involved with in township affairs? What were some of the other people?
Dick Blatchett, myself, Bud Hughes. Of course, we merged with Wesleyville as a school district. So we had school board members from both communities. Yes, Bill Richter was a school board member.
Mr. Hazelton?
Orm Hazelton, yes.
Were you ever involved with Don Meyer?
Yes. Don was the school board president through much of my time.
And when did you finally retire from Iroquois? Well, when did you become the business manager?
66, 67,
And when did you retire?
87. Yeah.
So you were there a good 30 years.
30 years ago, yes. I had 30 years and 3 or 4 days or something, but it's 30 years.
And what did you do after you retired?
Played a little bit. The township took a lot of my time, and I was happy to do it. I mean, everybody on the board except myself had a full-time job. So if we had a streets problem today, the streets commissioner was busy working for the GE or wherever he happened to work. Well, I'll take those calls for you today. Yeah. And I virtually had every job that they had. Sometime I'd stepped into somebody's jobs because they were working. I served as I was president of the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Commissioners for a year. That took a lot of my time. I was president of Northwest Regional Planning and Development Corporation out of Franklin. That entailed 8 counties: Erie, Crawford, Warren, Forest, Mercer, and 2 more. It was a loan association, and we had a lot of money tied up. It meant going to meetings that nobody else could attend because they're working full-time and couldn't get the time off.
What are some of your most vibrant memories of Lawrence Park in your time there? People, events?
One event that sticks in my mind was the flood. I've forgotten the year. I was living in 858 Smithson at the time. The telephone rang about 6 o'clock in the morning. This is Kevin Grant calling. Okay, Kevin, what do you need? You got to be here. Where are you? You got to be here. Where are you, Kevin? I'm at the foot of Main Street. No, he was at East Lake Road. A horrible rainstorm in the night. We had logs that built a dam right across the underpass where 4 Mile Creek underneath East Lake Road. I would get in my car and drove down 8 inches of water on Main Street, at the Main Street Bridge. And down at the East Lake Road Bridge, I was pretty up to my knees. And what are you going to do? Well, it became a real problem. Mark Gray was there. He was a police officer at the time. He was directing traffic, so they didn't want anybody to turn up Iroquois Avenue. They'd been up over their hubcaps in water on the car. So Mark took care of the traffic, and myself and Dan Bliley, who had Boyd and Bliley, and numerous people who nobody knew who they were. They all came in to help out. We had a big wrecking company come in there with a huge wrecker, triaxle wrecker, backed in and wrapped some of those logs with chains and couldn't pull them out. And the pressure from the water was so tremendous. Well, finally, Bob Hess, who was the fire chief at one time, he was a maintenance man at the GE. He came over and looked at the situation, kind of laughed. He said, I got the solution for you. I'll be here in a half hour. He came back with a small crane, I would call it, from GE. Put the boom out over the bridge abutment, right straight down. Joe Crotty was hanging onto this cable. They wrapped the cable around the top log, and he picked it up straight rather than trying to pull it out. just picked up. That's how we broke the dam. And as a result, people on East Lake Road, I don't know how, the act of God, Bud Hughes lived in the first house on East Lake Road, right next to the pump station, the sewage pump station. Bud opened his cellar door and took 1 foot on his basement step, and the whole place exploded. Power. Why he wasn't electrocuted, I'll never tell you. His basement was full. The basement of Sudan's restaurant was full. Ken Farber's house was full. Several houses on East Lake Road had water in the basements. Some had more than others. And that's the way it went, and people came from everywhere. And then after we got the water under control, then the cleanup started. So that was just a blessing in disguise. We had people from Titusville coming in from some Mennonite church or something in Titusville area with any kind of equipment you wanted that they could possibly do. Pumps, whatever, pumping out houses, cleaning up the mud on the floors. And everybody pitched in, and nobody got hurt, as far as I know. That was a real scary situation. Another one was I was sitting in the chair at the barber shop. I had a sitting appointment every 2 weeks at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon.
Which barber shop?
Jack Thompson's barber shop at the corner of Smithson and Main. And I walked down from the school. And it was raining pretty hard. And I got my hair cut. I couldn't get across Main Street. It was flooded. So, lo and behold, somebody called and said the high school auditorium is flooded. And so the water came down the parking lot, right in the back doors of the auditorium, and flooded. We had 3 feet of water at the front of the stage. And this building's only about 6 months old at this time. And so that was another situation that was different. And everybody pitched in, and people came from, I don't know where. I didn't know most of them. That was a good situation, good problem. The fire we had at the high school. Joe Buzanowski was the botany teacher at the time. And he had a greenhouse. And they had special lighting in the greenhouse. Well, something went bad in the transformer at 1 o'clock in the morning. Harold Beltwell was our, he taught, his side job was, he was the stockroom supervisor for all the teaching supplies. And he was quite often filled boxes on weekends. And his fire happened on a weekend, 2 o'clock in the morning. And Harold didn't know what to do. But people came from Harbor Creek, from Mill Creek, with equipment. And we missed, I think, 2 days of school. Cleaned up that whole mess and solved the problem. They installed a new trap in one of the drains, and that's how it took to solve the problem. But why the engineer didn't see that when he planned the building, heaven only knows. But my time at Lawrence Park has been great. I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of things. It's my home. I didn't.
When you retired,
Yes.
did you have a big party?
Not really.
No?
No. I'm not a party animal.
Oh, I thought maybe they threw a party for you or
We had
something.
a retirement party at the high school cafeteria.
So there were 2 of you that retired that year.
Two teachers, myself and Peg. Well, I was the business manager. Peg was a teacher, and Ray Van Horn was a school bus driver, maintenance man. He drove extra. The basketball team had to have a bus tonight. Ray was the extra bus driver, and the 3 of us retired that night.
When did you start walking every day?
When I was about 4 years old.
Good one.
My family did not own an automobile until I was a sophomore in college. My sister got married and left her car at home. She and her husband moved into Mercer, into an apartment. And she walked to work. She lived at the middle of the block. On the corner of the block was the National Bank, and she worked as a clerk at the bank.
In Lawrence Park?
No, in Mercer.
Okay.
And he worked at the Fredonia, at the Zachary plant. He had to have a car. So Marjorie got married and left her car at home for mother and dad. So I've always walked all through my life.
Who are you walking with these days?
Myself,
Yeah.
my dogs. I had always had a dog. Not always, but most always. I had a dog. And I was always of the opinion, if you've got a dog, you have to walk it. And so I get up in the morning at 5, whatever time, and I had, the first dog was Susie, a basset hound. Dumber than dumb. I couldn't teach her anything. Finally, I got rid of Susie, and about Thanksgiving time, I got a phone call late one night. Hello, Mr. Ogden. Yes, this is Christine Anderson. Yes, I just got home I'm in Iowa. I just got home from Iowa, and I've got a puppy. Would you be interested? And I said, well, I don't know. What kind of a dog is it? It's a English setter. Well, I like to hunt birds. I said, yeah, I'd be interested. She said, I want to give it to you as a gift. I don't want any money. We've had, this is the last pup in the litter that we couldn't get sold. And we have to move, and I want it to go to a kill shelter. Would you consider taking it? Well, it took me about 3 seconds to say yes. So I ended up with, and I called her Babe. On her registration papers, the dog registration, she was Chris's Noel Babe. And so I had her. And that didn't work out too well. So she needed a playmate, of course. So somewhere along the line, my daughter Paula had a friend who had a dog and had pups. And she went to McDowell High School. Paula knew her from Rainbow Girls or someplace. And they had a pup. And they had to get rid of it. They could keep 3. Okay. So we took the pup. We called him Fido. Very original. But we spelled it P-H-Y-D-E-A-U. Fido. And he was just a mutt. One of the best dogs I had. So I had the 2 of them.
What's your advice to young Parkers?
Work hard and give. Life is not how much can you get. It's how much can you give. And that's the way I felt throughout life. Yeah, I'm not patting myself on the back. That's not my idea. But
Well, you deserve accolades.
well, I've worked hard all my life. Didn't do me a bit of harm. Never made much money. But money doesn't buy everything. Now, my first teaching job, I made $3,000 for the year of teaching. My wife was teaching at the same time. She worked for Mill Creek School District. They paid twice a month, 1st and the 15th. She got 2 checks, one in mid-month for $102, one at the end of the month for $98. That was our income. How things have changed.
Well, I'm going to end by saying there are probably 1,000 kids out there who owe you a great deal, you and your colleagues at both Lawrence Park and Iroquois. And for that, we are thankful and grateful.
Well, thank you. I did what I wanted to do.
And you did it well.
And I made a lot of friends. I made a lot of enemies. But I went to sleep at night.
Okay,
And we were still able to drag third graders into your classroom on Friday afternoons without you noticing somehow. Me and Bob Johnstone.
Yeah, remember Bob? Sure. Yeah.
'Cause
Lived
the-
over on Karate Drive.
The elementary school let out at 3
Mhm.
on Fridays, and the high school was 3:30. So they'd walk by and we would drag one or two in through the open windows.
All right, I'm going to close now. Anything else before I shut off that you need to say?
I'm honored, I think, to have been selected for this. And if I can do anything in the future, you know where to find me.
You're always on our mind when it comes to the history of Lawrence Park.